Year is this? 17. All right, one person knows what year it is, so clearly you're not oriented to time and place. And what is next year? 2018. And what happens in 2018? I have no idea what you just said. So what I was looking for is there is a statewide election and there's a governor's race. And many of you recall that at our breakfast over the years we've had a number of Democratic candidates here, including a very successful one named Deval Patrick, who was here back in 2006. That might have been our first or second breakfast. And our first speaker is going to be Newton Mayor Seti Warren.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good morning. Good morning. It is great to be with you. Before I just share a little bit of why I'm here this morning, why I'm getting ready to run for governor. Every once in a while as a candidate, you get around the state, you get to cities and towns, and you run into people that remind you why you're doing it. That happened to me in this room this morning. I just ran into two women, Margaret Flaherty and Bev Logan, who taught at Newton North High School when I was there. And these two women somehow, some way figured out how to get me graduated. They pushed, they pulled, they urged, they planted seeds. They told me the sky was the limit. They said, you can go as far as you want, and I'm going to push you to do it. So I want to say thank you to the two of them for allowing me to be here, for their work as educators, and to remind us all we have to invest and support public education in this state. In this state. Look, you know, three things I think about when I think about this race. Three things. I think about my time in the military. I think about my 8 years as mayor of Newton, Massachusetts, and I think about my family. 10 years ago this fall, my commanding officer in the Navy Reserves asked me to go to Iraq for a year. I enlisted in the Navy Reserves a little bit after 9/11. My dad was in the military. Grandfather was in Battle of the Bulge, World War II. He said, you're going for a year. Around that same time, I also found out my wife was pregnant with our first child. Needless to say, this was a tough year. Two things came out of this deployment for me. Number one, a great appreciation for the men and women that serve in uniform and do multiple deployments, not just one, like I did. And second, the fact that I was on this base with men and women that had nothing in common with me. Men and women from different parts of the country, men and women of different race, background, religion, sexual orientation. We all had to live on this base. We all had to work on this base. We all had to have each other's back because we had to complete the mission. We could not afford not to work with one another because we were different than one another. That stuck with me. When I got home in 2008, fall 2008, to raise my family, I decided to make another decision. That was run for my hometown of Newton, Massachusetts. At the time, Newton had a $40 million structural deficit, one AAA bond rating that was in danger of being downgraded, two of the worst conditioned school buildings in the state of Massachusetts, and no rainy day fund. And I know you counselors in this room know what that means, and school committee members, because I've talked to you. 8 years since I've been mayor. We have 2 AAA bond ratings. We're building 5 new elementary schools in the next 6 years. We just put money aside in this year's budget that passed 2 nights ago to have a $20 million reserve fund that didn't exist. And we're protecting public safety, investing in infrastructure, reducing class size, reducing the achievement gap. How did we do it? 2 things. Number one, we were direct and honest about our budget, transparent. We looked at every expenditure, redeployed that to make sure that it was affected outcomes for people and people's lives in Newton, education, public safety, and our infrastructure. We worked collaboratively with our 17 unions to get good contracts in place, collective bargaining process, save money, protected services. Second, we did something that a lot of politicians and public officials don't do. Raise taxes. I did in my re-election year. I asked the voters of Newton, who don't, we had one tax override passed since mine, which I'm about to tell you about, that was passed since the inception of Proposition 2.5, put 3 questions on the ballot: schools, public education, infrastructure, public safety. 3 questions March of my re-election year. We won all 3 questions with 54% of the vote. I won my re-election with 72% of the vote. I tell you this story because as I think about what we've got to do at the state level, we Democrats have to have the courage to talk to our friends, talk to folks that are not Democrats, and say, let's be honest and transparent about what's going on Beacon Hill. Let's be honest about the fact we got to look at our expenditures, and let's be honest about the fact we have to raise revenue, right? If we're going to protect services, invest in the future. Last fall, I made another decision. That was not to run for a 3rd term as mayor. I've loved the job. We've done great work. I started to move around the Commonwealth. It was very clear that people and communities are falling behind. I believe the issue of our time is economic inequality, the lack of economic opportunity. And when I think about that question, I think about my own family. My parents did not grow up with wealth. They grew up in 2 tough neighborhoods in New York. My dad grew up in Harlem in what was deemed one of the worst blocks in America because of the drugs, gangs, and violence. He joined the military to get out of that life, went to Korea, came home. They went down south to North Carolina A&T for college. Took them 6 years to finish school. They were part of the civil rights movement. And they purchased the home where I grew up with my 2 sisters, and I live today in Newton with my wife, an 8-year-old and 5-year-old, with GI Bill benefits. GI Bill benefits, ladies and gentlemen. This is a government investment in people of modest means so that they can make ends meet and ensure their kids can do better than they did. That is not happening in our Commonwealth today. It is not happening. We have a low unemployment rate generally. We have growth in some of the greatest sectors in the world, in certain areas, life sciences, biotech, and all the rest. But yet at the same time, people are working part-time jobs. They're having long commutes, can't afford to keep up the cost of living in things like education and healthcare. And we have a state budget that is in crisis. They're going year to year, making cuts midway through the year in education, in opioid addiction funding, and healthcare. It's wrong. It's wrong economically, it's wrong morally, and it's not who this state is. The question in this campaign, I'm going to be asking all of you, is what kind of Commonwealth do we want to be? Are we going to meet that generational responsibility that generations in the past had, just like I talked about with my parents with the GI Bill? Are we going to step up and say, we need to look at our tax expenditures and look at our tax code in our budget today and find the money that we need to redeploy, invest in education, invest in transportation and infrastructure and housing? Are we going to not be afraid to say we need more revenue at the same time? I don't want to hear reform before revenue anymore. We need revenue now, and we need to make smart decisions now. We got to support the Fair Share Tax Amendment. Everyone know about that? We can ask people making $20,000 a week to pay a little bit more in income tax so we can reinvest that in education, in transportation, make sure people have health care that's accessible and community-based. We can do this if we stand up. Let me finish with this. Donald Trump. Everyone's talking about Donald Trump this morning, right? After the election, I was devastated. I worked my heart out for Hillary Clinton. I went to 6 battleground states. Bernie was great. He was awesome. Any one of these candidates would have been amazing in office. We have to push back against any policy that cuts off funding for people of moderate means. With this White House, with this administration, they're already talking about cuts in education, Title I, health care. We're going to push back. We're going to push back against any policies that are against our values, the Muslim ban, and all the rest, federalizing police officers. We're going to stand up. I've done it. I'm going to keep doing it. At the same time, yep, you can applaud for that, but this is what's most important. At the same time, the worst thing that Donald Trump is doing in this country is dividing us. Neighbors, friends, people that we know. There are 7,000 people that voted for Donald Trump in the city of Newton. There are 93 cities and towns that voted for Donald Trump in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. I know many of them, and I know you know many of them. Many of them are our neighbors, our friends, our workmates. Not all of those folks voted for Trump for those reasons that I just outlined. We've got to reach out to those folks. We've got to work together if we're going to solve the difficult problems that I just outlined of income inequality, economic inequality, and opportunity for people. And that's what I learned on that base in Iraq. We can't afford, just like I couldn't afford, not to work with people that didn't agree with me, had a different political persuasion, or of a different race or geography. We have got to work together, folks. We can stay strong with our values. At the same time, we can treat each other as neighbors and as human beings so that we can tackle this insidious challenge we have of economic inequality. So when I think about this race, we got a lot of work to do. It's not just about policy, it's about who we are as a Commonwealth and who we want to be. We are one Commonwealth. I know we can do better. I would love to earn your support in this race. I'm going to be out here a lot the next 17 months. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to speak today. Let's go out and do this. We can do this. We can win. Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is representing gubernatorial candidate Jay Gonzalez, and that is his wife, Cindy Roy Gonzalez. So please welcome Cindy.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you so much for having me. I think the campaign has figured out how to get me out of bed at 5 o'clock on a Saturday morning, send me to a place like Newburyport. So thank you so much. Jay's sorry he couldn't be with you all today, but he has spent a little bit of time on the North Shore over the last couple of months, and he will be back. So I just want to take a couple of minutes this morning and tell you a little bit about Jay, about who he is, about his values, about why I think he'd make such a great governor, and why I think Charlie Baker is beatable, for my friends, my new friends in the back who are questioning that. And I think lots of people in this room who are questioning, can Charlie Baker be beat? So I want to start by telling you first a little bit about Jay. So Jay and I met when we worked for Governor Deval Patrick. Jay was the Secretary of Administration and Finance during the worst economic crisis that this country has seen since the Great Depression. And despite that, despite the challenges of being in that position during that time, he showed up to work every day, optimistic, motivated, and ready to work. And he got big things done. We had the highest level of investment in infrastructure and in education, despite the challenges we faced. We had the highest bond rating. I never thought I would be talking about bond ratings and how important they are, but the highest bond rating in state history. Under Governor Charlie Baker, during economic growth and recovery, our bond ratings are at risk. So a little bit more about Jay. He has two daughters, Isabel and Abby. They're 13 and 16. In fact, the reason Jay can't be here this morning is he promised his 13-year-old daughter that he would go to her soccer game, which if you have 13-year-olds or 16-year-olds, you know that doesn't happen ever. So he made that commitment. He grew up in Cleveland, Ohio. His mom was from Cleveland, and she went on a foreign exchange program to Spain in college, and spent about 9 months there, and came back to Cleveland, pregnant with Jay, and married to Jay's dad, who didn't speak English. So they moved back to Cleveland and didn't have much. His mom had to drop out of college in order to take care of Jay. His dad, like I said, didn't speak English. His dad got a job laying bricks in the city sewer system, while his mom stayed home and took care of Jay and subsequently his two brothers. But they worked hard, and they had help, and they had hope. They were optimistic. And I think it's Jay's parents' story that has stayed with Jay, their ability to impart on Jay and his brothers the ethics and values of aiming high, working hard, and supporting in and believing in one another. Those are the values that guide Jay and the values that he's led by today and will bring to the corner office. But I'd also argue that those are our values. Those are Massachusetts values. We've always been a leader, we've always aimed high, and we've always worked hard to get ahead. But under Governor Charlie Baker, that's not where we are anymore. And Jay and I are really concerned about that. We do not have leadership in the corner office. And with Donald Trump in the White House, we need to be leading here in Massachusetts. We can't afford to leave it up to Governor Baker or to Donald Trump. Jay will be the kind of governor that we can believe in. The whole case for Jay's governorship is that he believes in people, he wants to help people, and he sees government's ability to lift people up, to give people a fair shot. He cares deeply about people. When Jay was the Secretary of Administration and Finance, he often had to tell people no. But he found a way to work with the legislature and get things done. Like I said, highest investment in education. A couple of weeks ago, Jay put out his first policy paper, investment in early education. By the end of his first term, there will be no waiting list to send your kid to daycare or to early education programs. We are falling behind on that in many issues. We need a governor who believes in transparency and accountability to the public. It's why one of the first things he's done on the campaign trail is pledge that he will make the governor's office subject to the public record law. I don't think that's too much to ask. Governor Baker won't do it. He picks and chooses when to make records available to the public, despite the fact that we have a right to see them. So these are just a couple of things that Jay's done over the last couple of weeks. The last couple things I want to say. Jay supports the fair share tax. I know SETI does, and I know some of the other folks who are running for office do as well. He asked Charlie Baker this week to stand up and let us know where he is on this. Charlie Baker, like he's done for the last 3 years, took a pass. I think we have a right to know where he stands. And we can't afford not to make the investments that that new revenue would allow us to make. Charlie Baker is beatable. He is eminently beatable. But it is going to take the people in this room and Democrats across the Commonwealth and all these new people who are getting engaged to talk to their friends, to explain, ask them, what has Charlie Baker done for you? I've asked that question, and I get blank faces. We need your support, we need your help. Jay cares deeply about people, and he is running for governor because he wants to make a difference in people's lives. He believes that we need leadership in the corner office again. We cannot be content with the status quo, which is what we have today. So thank you for allowing me to speak. I hope that you'll check out his website. It's j4ma.com, j4ma.com. Thank you so much for having me, and enjoy the rest of your breakfast.
It's always very important to recognize the piano player. So, Bob Allison. So, next we're going to hear from our relatively new executive director of the Massachusetts State Democratic Party, and please welcome Veronica Martinez.
Good morning. Wow, it is so exciting to see so many people here. This is such a great sign for our convention. You all might have seen that our platform came out just yesterday. If you haven't seen it yet, you can go to our website. But the theme for our platform and for our convention this year is Many Voices, Shared Values. I think that's especially important after the election, but it's important for us to remember as a party. We're a Big Tent party. It's important to us to be big, to appreciate the opinions of others, but fight for our shared values together. We're going to come together on June 3rd, and we'll vote on our platform. And so our voices will come define our shared values, but it's important to remember it doesn't stop there. I personally think, and I think many of you would probably agree, that our voices have been the strongest check on the Trump administration so far. Our voices are important when we support our elected officials who are doing amazing work to stop the Trump administration. Our voices are important when we come together, we protest and we march and we fight his ludicrous policies together. And our voices are going to be important when we fight together for 2018. So I want to keep it brief because I know eggs are getting cold and I don't want to take up too much of your time. But I do want to say thank you all for participating. I'm so excited to see you on June 3rd. I'm excited to keep fighting with you ahead in 2018 and beyond. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, Veronica. Next, I'd like to introduce a person who's certainly not a stranger, who's been to a lot of these breakfasts over the years, and that's our State Senator, Katie O'Connor Ives.
It's my honor now to represent you in my capacity as the State Senator. I do represent 7 communities. I represent Newburyport, which is my home, Salisbury, Amesbury, Merrimack, all of Haverhill, all of Methuen, technically half of North Andover, but really all of North Andover, and as well as Plum Island, which is its own special place. So with that, there's a lot to report on, and I asked Ed for his blessing because I do want to cover a lot of things. It's an important time right now at the State Senate. We're going to be taking up the budget next week, literally. Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, the Senate will be debating the budget. The House has already completed their deliberations and responded to Governor Baker's preferred version of the budget. And as you know, it starts with what the governor would like. The House responds in turn, then the Senate, and then in the very end, the Senate and the House have to reconcile their differences in terms of all of these various priorities. I want to take a step back initially and recognize the gravity of the fact that we are living in a post-Trump era, and what does that mean for Democrats, especially at the local and state level, because that's where I live. And I do think we have so many amazing familiar faces here today, the foot soldiers who are working in the trenches year in and year out, before there was a Trump and after there was a Trump, doing all that hard work, and that work needs to be recognized. Because I think it's very important as new people are becoming engaged, there are people that have 30 years of experiential knowledge trying to keep districts blue, trying to keep our state blue, and it's very important that we welcome perspectives and we remain a big tent Democratic Party. I want to mention a couple of things that we're contending with. So with the budget, supposedly revenues are low, but it's notable that the Boston Globe covered in an article, I'm going to grab the date so you can look it up yourself. So an April 27th article, 7 large mass companies cited study as paying little or no state taxes. So when we talk about the fact that we need new revenue, 240 corporations avoided 126 billion, with a B, billion, in state corporate income taxes between 2008 and 2015. So for context, the state budget is $41 billion. And we don't have enough money. We don't have enough money for infrastructure. We don't have enough money for social services. We don't have enough money to give our kids the education they deserve. We're backlogged with the university infrastructure system. The list goes on and on. And so I feel very strongly that it may be nice sometimes to be able to say, you know what? There is an ideal of what a Democrat is. There's an ideal of what a person needs to be a member of this party. But I tell you what, everyone needs to hold this Republican administration accountable and not be duped. I'll give you a couple of examples. So in terms of infrastructure, the MBTA is in disarray. And the legislature fought very hard to keep the fares low, because that's how you make it a viable option for people trying to use it and you keep cars off the road. But fares went up, and now we're even fighting to stop an initiative to end weekend service in Newburyport, in Haverhill, on other lines, without any alternative given to the people that are purchasing tickets. That is a common sense thing that residents need to stand up for and fight for. Because even if there needs to be fiscal management on a public transportation system, if no one can ride it, then that's not effective. Another issue you need to keep your eye on. I talked to my superintendents in my 7 communities, plus the regional school systems, and they are at their wits' end. Because the Commissioner of Education and all of their mandates, and all of their bureaucratic paper-pushing requirements, and all of their new ideas for standardized testing is creating a public education system where teachers are at their wits' end and there's no incentive to start in that profession or stay in it. And the students now just are taught to the test, where electives that might actually inspire children to read and to be interested in learning, things like recess, field trips, it's all gone. It's all gone. And public education has become a situation where now we're just fighting over dollars in a limited pool, where the administration wants to be lauded for offering a $90 million increase when the needs are up to $2 billion. We need to pay attention because there's nothing left to cut in any school district in the state of Massachusetts. You can hear that Massachusetts has the best education in the country. I think we all know, if we look at our newspapers, we look at our kids in our school committees, Massachusetts can do better. I have a long list. Now, the issue of taxation is an awkward one for everyone. Every legislator under Beacon Hill has their own opinion on how to raise revenue, how to end certain taxes, increase other ones, who should be taxed and who shouldn't. But another issue to keep your eye on is the fact that there is no initiative in this state to focus on increasing tourism anymore. And we know that for every dollar of tourism marketing invested to compete with states like New York, and Vermont, and New Hampshire, and Maine. You might notice on NPR, Maine is advertising in Massachusetts. Massachusetts isn't anymore. So for every dollar that we invest, we get $7 back. Another issue near and dear to my heart that you should pay attention to, especially if you care about giving working families the opportunity to participate in the workforce, is something called kindergarten expansion grants. Thank you, Monique. And it was a fantastic initiative. And what frustrates me is when things work, don't tinker with it. Kindergarten expansion grants worked in the state of Massachusetts, meaning that for full-time kindergarten, some cities and towns don't have a population base where the parents can pay for it. But let's make sure that these kids are not at a disadvantage and give them access through a competitive grant program. Let's get kindergarten right. Well, we had the momentum, and it worked to sustain it. It's another issue I ask you to focus on, because when you think about it, if a parent in Methuen or Haverhill or North Andover can't afford kindergarten, that may make the difference between them deciding to go back to work or not. Another issue that has the potential to be perceived as international, but it breaks our hearts when we read the headlines and we wonder, what can we do, is this issue about the travel ban and Massachusetts' position with the refugee crisis. Now, I'm happy to report to you that the Massachusetts Senate passed a unanimous resolution condemning Trump's travel ban. And I'm proud of that. It was notable. I filed it because I wanted to figure out, when you feel very powerless, what is it that we can all do within our own power to make a difference? And it passed. But I'm also mindful of the fact that Governor Baker, before this issue became even more and more and more tragic, went on the record saying that he was uncomfortable letting any Syrian refugees come into the state of Massachusetts. And it's my position that his position needs to be revisited now. He is the most popular Republican governor in the United States, right? So why not use that leadership and use that popularity to drive an agenda that helps all people and lead? You cannot be all things to all people in government. It just doesn't work. We have to hold them accountable, and I'll give you a last example. Last year in the budget, when times were rosy compared to how they are now, every legislator filed earmarks to help their districts. Now, the term earmarks is considered a dirty word. It's characterized as pork barrel spending and pet projects. But I'll tell you what earmarks are. Earmarks are legislators' priorities using their best discretion, working directly with their local constituents and elected officials. That's what earmarks are. And last year, I'm one legislator, they were all cut. I filed 2 important earmarks, having heard from my district. One was to continue to support what's called the early college program for the students in my district. And that allows students that want to be able to explore college for them while in high school to work with Northern Essex Community College and save a lot of money by earning credits while in high school. So it's twofold. They get to explore that college may be right for them and they're capable, and their parents save a lot on future debt, and they can always apply those credits to any school they want. That was cut. And secondly, I put in $250,000 to finally safely close the Crow Lane landfill. And residents in the neighborhoods that are abutting are year in and year out exposed to hydrogen sulfide. It's not fair, and that landfill was created based on big dig waste that benefited all people in the state under a state policy that they now say they would never do again. That was cut. I'll refile those earmarks in this budget. But don't be fooled, because when grant monies are sprinkled around and ribbons are being cut and headlines are being made about this state grant and that state grant, that's our tax money too. It's just that the administration is issuing it and has complete discretion. So I ask you to stand with your legislators, whether I'm your legislator or not, and make sure that our earmarks are protected in this budget. Because what will happen is it will be included in the budget, and then they will be vetoed, and then we'll restore the vetoes, and then the governor has unilateral discretion to do what's called 9C cuts. It's an inevitability, and I have learned that if you call and you voice your concern, it's extremely, extremely effective. In closing, I want to mention, on a brighter note, an opportunity that's arisen, and I asked to chair a particular committee in the state Senate called Post, Audit, and Oversight. And what that allows me to do is to have the discretion of picking a couple of topics I think merit a deeper dive to see if government can do better and ways to improve. And the 2 topics I'm going to focus on, one being the Department of Children and Families, and working with them in partnership, not in an adversarial way, but figuring out, in the unfortunate opioid crisis that we're living in, where time is of the essence for all of these vulnerable children that need safe spaces to live, either temporarily or permanently, what can we do to expand the fold of potential foster or adoptive parents who may love to offer a safe space and care, if they only understood the opportunity and what was involved with it. That's one topic we'll be exploring. The second one is related, and again with revenues, we still don't have enough treatment beds. We don't have a curriculum statewide to respond to the opioid crisis. Our state's health curriculum hasn't been updated at the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education since the mid-90s. Our schools don't have enough health teachers, our police, our fire, our hospitals, it goes on and on and on. So what do? In Massachusetts, we have a tobacco trust fund that was developed when Big Tobacco was trying to figure out how to make everything better after they made countless families and people sick from their products. I want to explore whether or not we can do the same thing with the big manufacturers of these addictive narcotic drugs who have walked away with big profits under their belts and no skin in the game to help solve this crisis. I said that was the last thing, but I'll say one more thing. And I wanted to ask you, because you're activists, you're experienced, you make a difference, with the issue of healthcare looming in DC, and we only have so much influence in DC, I wanted to ask folks here, how many of you are familiar with what's called, it's a long name, the Hospital Price Variation Commission? Has anyone heard of this thing? Thank you, Mayor Holliday. Councilor Cameron. So, what it is that there was a commission constituted last year to explore how to solve a very serious problem, which is our community hospitals. We know which community hospitals we love and we want to support. They get paid a differential, unfair rate by insurance companies. It's arbitrary. It's not based on the quality of care. It's not based on results. It's not based on geography. It just happened in the 80s, and they have to live with it. And this Price Variation Commission came back with some very strong recommendations, and they said we need to fix this, or else our community hospitals are going away. And how do you fix it? You increase the rates. It's a successful commission of people in the industry, elected officials, people that experience it from the patient side, and the legislature has a responsibility to implement those recommendations, and I'll tell you why. If our community hospitals are able to at least play fair with the teaching hospitals in the larger cities so that people have choices, we need to maintain those choices. That means that new health insurance products will be created. And we need more options for our small businesses, for all different types of people. Young people that are healthy, people that have pre-existing conditions. We don't have enough options for our people. Right now, the two options are mass health and expensive private insurance. Mass health is becoming 50% of our state budget and growing. And that reflects that people don't have affordable health care options. If the legislature passes these recommendations, I am certain that our community hospitals will finally be able to grow and get the kudos they often deserve for being more competitive, more efficient, and more responsive to community needs. So I will conclude, because I imagine that there are other speakers, but I am here to represent you. I want your feedback. Haley Klein is my chief of staff in my office. And over the course of the upcoming week, if there's stuff that you need me to focus on in terms of budget issues or policy components of the budget, call our office and let us know. And thank you for your engagement and activism as fellow Democrats.
So we're going to hear from the Salisbury Democrats, and then we've got a couple of other speakers, and Congressman Moulton also will be joining us. So I'm going to turn this over to John Husianitis.
This year's 2017 Salisbury Democratic Scholarship winner is a senior at Triton High School who will attend High Point University in North Carolina in the fall studying mathematical economics. She's been active in her student council and area student councils. She's volunteered at her parish, the Holy Family Parish in Amesbury, by running dinners for veterans. She's volunteered with the Special Olympics of Massachusetts. She's run coat drives for the needy. She also has been an executive board member of the Massachusetts 6th District Congressional Youth Cabinet for 2 years, working with our Congressman Seth Moulton on issues of terrorism, the opioid crisis, and the educational system. Our winner is the daughter of Marilyn and Robert Vedrani of Salisbury. She wants to make a difference in this world. I want to thank the Scholarship Committee for their work in helping to choose our scholarship winner. Join me in recognizing an outstanding young lady, a mover and shaker now and in the future, the Salisbury 2017 Democratic Town Committee winner, Jessica Vedrani.
Thank you to the Salisbury Democratic Town Committee for selecting me to receive this scholarship and aiding me in my future education. And thank you to my family for always being there for me.
And next, I'd like to welcome and introduce Deborah Gilmore. Deborah is representing John O'Brien, who's our Essex County Register of Deeds. Please welcome Deborah.
Nice to see you. How are you?
Good morning. Thank you, Ed, Kathy. Thank you to the committee for all being here. I have to say, after being through what we've been through under this current administration, it's nice to be in the company of some like-minded folks. And so it's just lovely to be here today. Yeah. John sends his apologies that he could not be here today. There was an unexpected twist of events that came up that precluded him from being with you. So, John O'Brien, Register of Deeds. What is the Registry of Deeds? Anyone know? Y'all know? I mean, it's a pretty low visible office, but plays a very important role. He is the librarian of all the land records for the 30 cities and towns in southern Essex County. So all your land records, you own property, you have mortgages, they're processed through the registry. What he does in this low visibility office is ensure that they are not fraudulent, that they're credible, and that they won't tarnish your chain of ownership. Since the foreclosure crisis that hit a few years ago, there was an onslaught of documents being processed through our registry. And John suspected that there was some underhanded tactics going on, did a forensic report, and was discovered a lot of these documents signed by the big, greedy Wall Street lenders had robo-signers on them. So, to this day, he is the only Register of Deeds in the nation that will not accept a document signed by a known robo-signer. He would appreciate that. This is very near and dear to his heart. He's well known throughout the conveyancing industry, to the chagrin of some, as somebody who won't do this. But he looks at it this way. This is your property. And for most of us, it's our highest and most valuable asset, and it should be protected. You who vote for him, you hire him to maintain the integrity of those land records. He takes that job seriously. So he looks out for you in that respect. Foreclosures they're still going on. In 2015, there were like 374, we track it. In 2016, 474. To date, there's 192 foreclosure deeds gone to record. We're only 4 months in, so it's going to surpass even last year. With all that in mind, the FBI has now reported that one of the highest white-collar crimes in America is property and mortgage fraud. This is alarming, particularly to John as the Register of Deeds. So what he has done is developed a program. It's about to launch in a week or two, where you sign up with us. You enter your name, your address, where your property is. You will receive a notification from our registry the very day any document goes to record that contains your criteria, and you'll be notified by us. If you sign up via email, you will get a link, and you'll be able to click on the link and look at the image of the document. Oh, did I sign that today? Oh, do I know about this? If there's any irregularity, you pick up the phone, you call us, we'll point you in the right direction of who you want to contact. So this is a big program, and one that John has worked very hard on and is very excited to launch, and I think it will be to the benefit of all of you. Our customer service team is second to none. Our motto is, how may we help you? And it's not a motto, it's our creed. So if there's anything you ever need regarding your land records, a copy of a deed, research a home, whatever you might need, give us a call, email us, we'll get it done for you. Thanks for having us. Remember, resist, resist, resist. Keep up the fight.
So our next speaker is from Senator Elizabeth Warren's office, and please welcome Adrienne Variengo.
Good morning, and I want to start off by thanking you all for welcoming me here today. The breakfast was delicious. I am Senator Elizabeth Warren's North Shore and Merrimack Valley Regional Director. My name is Adrienne Variengo, and I do have some words from the Senator for you today. Please excuse that I will be reading them, as they are her exact words. Good morning, 3T2C. I wish I could be there in person today. We're facing some tough fights right now in Washington, in Massachusetts, and across the country. But I know that we can't win if we don't get out there and fight for what we believe in. I'm committed to doing my part in Washington to fight for our families and to hold the Trump administration accountable. And I'm glad to know that I've got such strong partners back here at home. Thank you all for what you do to fight for democratic values and a level playing field for Massachusetts families. Thank you.
Our president made comment that he's been subject to the biggest witch hunt in American history. And a certain congressman who's sitting in the back sipping coffee replied on Twitter that, and he said, as the representative and the congressman for the city of Salem, Massachusetts, I can attest that that is not true. So here's Witchcraft by Frank Sinatra, and here's your Congressman Seth Moulton.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much. Thank you. Thank you all very, very much. Excellent. Trust me, I know when they're standing for the pianist and not for the congressman. I will be brief so that I can take a few questions. I would love to take a few questions from you. I know that's not usually the format here, but these are extraordinary times, and so I think everything should be a little bit different. But let me talk about my priorities. How many people know that we just finished Infrastructure Week? This was supposed to be National Infrastructure Week, which is actually something Democrats and Republicans agree on. It's one of the very few things in Trump's inauguration address that we said, oh, that actually, yes, that's a good idea. And yet we haven't even been talking about it at all. No one even knows that it's Infrastructure Week because it's just scandal after scandal coming out of the White House. This is the week when we learned that President Trump disclosed highly classified intelligence to the Russians. Not to anybody, not to a campaign, not to another American, not to CNN, to the Russians in the Oval Office against one of our sources against ISIS. Then we learned that he told FBI Director Comey not to pursue an investigation against Michael Flynn, who we then learned was under investigation by the FBI before he was hired as a national security advisor. And I sent out a tweet about that too. I said, look, it would have endangered our national security to hire Michael Flynn as a White House intern. But we hired him as the national security advisor. I mean, you can't make this up. And then we finally learned that they were going to actually appoint a special prosecutor, who of course Trump had said was unnecessary. It sounds like the Justice Department, in a rare moment of acting in the name of justice, came out and said, "No, God, we have to have a special prosecutor." So they appointed Robert Mueller, and I think there is bipartisan consensus and confidence in Robert Mueller. There's a part of me that wishes that I were in Washington in the height of the 1960s. When we were trying to change the world, and saying, "Oh, we've got some extra federal funds. Let's send a man to the moon." Those were exciting times, and I want to get back to a place like that in American history, when we are leading the world, when we are rebuilding our infrastructure, when we're creating jobs, not sending people back into the coal mines to deal with today's economic problems, but talking about the economy of the future. That's what we should be doing in America as Democrats and Republicans, but especially as Democrats. And that context gets me to my three priorities. My first priority, my number one priority right now as your representative, is to stand up to the president. And that is something I will continue to do. And I do that in a variety of ways. One way is just by getting up and speaking out on Twitter, on TV. Some people say, oh, I see you on TV all the time. We actually I turned down 2 TV requests last night, CNN and MSNBC, because I said I got to be able to wake up and do this breakfast in the morning. So for those of you who think I'm just chasing after TV cameras, that's not at all true. But when I can, I get on when they ask, and I speak from my perspective on national security, which there aren't a lot of Democrats who have my background in national security, being a veteran. And so I'm holding the administration accountable wherever I can. And I think that matters to everybody in America, not just the folks in this district. The second thing that I'm working on, which really matters to the people in this room, is I'm working on reforming the Democratic Party. Look, we've got to come to terms with the fact that we lost. We lost. And we lost to a guy who, I mean, to use his words, is a nut job, okay? That's who we lost to. And we lost in the House and the Senate, governorships, state legislatures. The Democratic Party is in one of its worst positions in the United States of America in decades. And that requires that we look in the mirror. That requires that we be self-reflective. We think about what we can do better. We think about why we're losing touch with Middle America when actually our economic policies are generally pretty good for Middle America. We've got to figure out why this unprecedented economic recovery under President Obama, over 50 months of consecutive job growth that's never happened in American history, and yet it didn't happen everywhere. We did pretty well in this part of the world. But a lot of places, Ohio, Kentucky, Arizona, they did not do as well. And the opportunity for Democrats is if we can figure out an economic plan that reaches Middle America, that says you can succeed in the new economy if you live in Cambridge, Massachusetts, or Silicon Valley, California, but also if you live in Louisville, if you live in Detroit, if you live in an old steel town in Ohio or West Virginia. If we can do that, we're going to win these seats back. And the way that we advance our agenda in 2018 and beyond is by winning back the House and the Senate. It's by winning the presidency in 2020. That's why, so what have I done? Well, first of all, I just stood up to our party leadership and said, we've got to give someone an opportunity to run against Leader Pelosi, which we did. And we had a chance to, and she won, but we actually got a lot of changes in the way that the caucus is run because of that. A lot of new voices are coming up now. 6 positions that were formerly appointed by her are now elected in the Democratic caucus. That makes a difference. I'm also recruiting. I've been named the #1 Democratic recruiter in the country because I'm trying to get new candidates who can win these tough races. And that's what matters. So as you follow Victoria and my team, we're going to be sending out to you information on which races that you can get involved in and support. We had over 300 people come to the office in Salem and make calls down to the special election in Georgia, to John Ossoff's race, to try to get him over the line. Those calls mattered. We came close, we didn't quite win, but that matters. And it's a great signal from up here in Massachusetts that we can influence races across the country. And then the third thing I'm doing, the third priority, gets back to something I said earlier, which is that we do have to figure out an economic plan that can reach all of America. I spent some time down at MIT recently, and they are studying the future of work, how jobs are changing, how a lot of jobs are getting automated out of existence. And they made a map of the whole country, and they showed which cities are susceptible to automation more than others, based on the kinds of jobs that they have. Some jobs in a lot of cities are very easy to get automated. The cities that are all based around truck driving, they expect trucks to get automated, so they're going to lose a lot of jobs. On the other hand, if you're a city that's based around biotech, you're probably not going to lose jobs too soon. When you look at this map and you put blue is safe and red is in danger, it looks like the congressional map of the United States. The blue districts are all Democrat on the coast. The red districts, the ones that are suffering from automation, people are losing their jobs to robots, they're red. Now that tells us two things. One, it tells us that the Republican Party and Trump have been effective at reaching those people who feel like they've been left out of the economic recovery. But the other thing it tells you is that if we're the ones who are first to figure out a plan, not a, hey, let's go down to the hardware store and get pickaxes so we can go back into the coal mines. That's not a plan. Even the coal miners don't want their sons and daughters to go back into the coal mines. And there aren't enough jobs there anyway. If we can figure out a realistic plan to meet the demands of this new economy, we can win a lot of those seats back. And we can flip that map. And people in Middle America, for a change, will start looking to us as the party that looks out for them. Go back to our roots of looking out for working class Americans, for working families who are making a difference, who can grow the middle class. That's the future. That's the future to a successful economy in America, and I believe it's a future to getting more Democrats elected to office. So that is important work. So I will just take one or two questions now about anything you'd like. There are so many things to cover, so. Yes, sir.
Two questions.
Sure.
Even if we don't figure out what the new economy is going to be technically, I think an infrastructure program that creates jobs to rebuild America is what we need as a transition. So if the Democrats get back to doing what FDR did, and let's put people to work to rebuild America, we can get to the new economy. Second question is, I heard the president just reappointed the chief of staff, the joint chief of staff, that's in the news yesterday. News disappointment? And if so, what do you think of that in terms of having the Joint Chiefs stop from making mistakes in places like North Korea?
With regards to the Joint Chiefs, I know General Dunford, who's the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, quite well. He was the Marine Commandant before. And I'll just tell everybody here, we are very lucky that General Joe Dunford of Boston is the chairman of the Joint Chiefs right now in American history. He totally gets it, and he gets the president, and I won't say anything more. But you should feel good about him. The second question on infrastructure, look, I totally agree with you. And let's not forget that President Obama was calling for investing in infrastructure for 8 years. Okay, so this is a bipartisan thing. But there's two things. Trump's plan's got to be paid for. We can't just be passing off the debt to our children and grandchildren, which is based on his preliminary proposals, what he wants to do. And my second criteria is we need to be investing in 21st century infrastructure. You know, this is why I'm such an advocate for the North-South rail link, to finally connect the North and the South commuter rail lines. You know, I'm opposed, you know, the governor's on the other side of this. He wants to add 7 tracks to South Station, which, by the way, will solve the capacity problem at South Station for, wait for it, 10 years. Probably, the thing will barely even be completed in 10 years, and it will already be out of date. The South Station expansion project would put more people on the already overcrowded core system, the red line, the green line. The North-South rail link would take them off. And we're going to have some new estimates on the cost coming out soon that have been worked up by Harvard. But I think you'll be amazed at how similar in price these two projects are. What's not similar are the benefits. The fact that in places like Lowell and Lynn, you're going to see dramatic increases in housing and real estate development, because all of a sudden you're going to be able to live in Lowell and work in the South Boston Seaport. And you're going to be able to get on a train in Newburyport and get to Boston in about half the time you can today. It'll be an electric train, it'll be faster, smoother, and it'll be quieter for all the neighbors, and you'll get right downtown. There are 36 cities across the world that are doing cross-city rail links right now. We haven't found a single one that's expanding a stub-end terminal like South Station. So we have a historic chance in Massachusetts to make a decision that will matter for literally generations to come. I mean, let's not forget, the North-South Rail Link is a project that was originally put on hold. Does anyone know? No, it was originally put on hold for World War I. But better late than never. It's a great saying. Better late than never. That's the kind of 21st century infrastructure we need to be investing in. So those are the two tests. Is his plan going to be paid for, and are we investing in the right things, not just adding more lanes to highways? Those are the things that I will be looking at. But I do hope we can get bipartisan support for his plan. And with that, I should go. But thank you all so much. It's such an honor to represent you. I never forget that I work for you every single day, and I'm very proud to represent you in Washington, D.C. Thank you so much.